Dear students, in Unit 2, you have to study different religions that are practiced in India. One of them is Buddhism. Buddhism is one of the major world religions, began in India around the 6th century BCE. The teachings of Buddhism spread throughout Central and Southeast Asia through China, Korea, and Japan. Today, there are Buddhists all over the world. Buddhism was founded by Gautam Buddha. He was born as Prince Siddharth at Lumbini near Kapilvastu in present Nepal in 566 BC. He was the son of Shuddhodhan and Mahamaya. Shuddhodhan was the chief of the Shakya clan. Due to this, Buddha was also known as Shakya Muni. He was married to Yashodhara and had a son Rahul. He left his home at the age of 29 to become an ascetic. The idea of renunciation occurred to the Buddha after he saw 4 different states of man, that is, sick man, old man, corpse, and ascetic. He wandered for 7 years and at the age of 35 attained enlightenment at Uruvela while meditating under a banyan tree or the Bodhi tree, and the place became Bodh Gaya in Bihar. The term Buddha means enlightened one. He gave his first sermon at Sarnath near Varanasi. This event is called Dharm Chakra Pravartan. He died under a sal tree in Kushinagar. This event is called Mahaparinirvan. The message of his enlightenment points to man, the way of life that leads beyond suffering. When anyone asked Buddha metaphysical questions as to whether the soul was different from the body, whether it survived death, whether the world was finite or infinite, eternal or non-eternal, etc., he avoided discussing them by saying that they were neither profitable nor conducive to the highest good. Instead of discussing metaphysical questions which are ethically useless and intellectually uncertain, Buddha always tried to enlighten persons on the most important questions of sorrow, its origin, its cessation, and the path leading to its cessation. The answer to the 4 questions noted above constitute, as we know, the essence of Buddha's enlightenment, which he is eager to share with all fellow beings. These have come to be known as the 4 Noble Truths. Now, salient features of Buddhism. Buddhism is primarily a religion without God. Buddha taught a purely humanistic religion whose sole concern was the liberation of the suffering man. Man's only religious obligation is to free himself from the bonds of worldly suffering by following the 8-fold discipline. Early Buddhism is a purely ethical religion free from all sorts of ritualism, but later Buddhism, at least in the form of the Mahayana, gives vent to ritualism. It believes in the 4 Noble Truths, and the pursuit of the 8-fold discipline seem to be the essence of Buddhism. 2 of the very characteristic beliefs of Buddhism are its belief in the theory of momentariness and the doctrine of no soul, which are very important part of Buddhist faith. One very important feature of Buddhism which helps in maintaining its oriental character and which brings it very close to Hinduism is its belief in the law of karma and rebirth. Everyone has to reap the consequences of his action either in this life or in life after death. If one does not exhaust the fruits of one's action in this life, he has to take birth again. And the nature of this rebirth is strictly conditioned by the actions one has done in the present life. Although actions bind and are the root cause of sufferings, only the attached actions are of this kind. Non-attached actions do not bind. Therefore, in Buddhism doesn't teach inaction. It rather teaches to perform non-attached or selfless actions. Buddhism teaches the avoidance of extremes and the adoption of the middle path in every sphere, in metaphysics, in ethics, in general practice, and everywhere. Quite in conformity with its humanistic ethics, Buddhism believes in the doctrine of universal salvation. It teaches that it is not sufficient for anyone to attain his own salvation. Some of the ethical virtues that Buddhism repeatedly emphasizes are those of non-violence, truth, kindness to all beings, self-restraint, nobleness, chastity, etc. Of these, ahimsa is most emphasized. Now, the Four Noble Truths. The religious philosophy of Buddhism is centered on the Four Noble Truths given by Buddha in his first sermon after his enlightenment. The truths are: first one is, life is full of sufferings. Second one is, there is cause of sufferings. Third one is, there is cessation of suffering. And the last is, there is a way leading to this cessation of sufferings. Now, the first noble truth. Life is full of misery and pain. Even the so-called pleasures are really fraught with pain. There is always fear that we may lose the so-called pleasures, and their loss involves pain. Indulgence also results in pain. Suffering comes in many forms: poverty, disease, old age, death, selfishness, greed, anger, hatred, conflicts, exploitation are rampant in this world. That life is full of suffering, none can deny. Some people who encounter this teaching may find it neither optimistic nor pessimistic, but realistic. Fortunately, the Buddha's teachings do not end with suffering. Rather, they go on to tell us what we can do about it and how to end it. Now, the second noble truth. Our day-to-day troubles may seem to have easily identifiable causes: thirst, pain from injury, sadness from the loss of a loved ones. The Buddha taught that the root of all sufferings is desire. This comes in three forms, which he described as the three roots of evil or the three poisons. These are the three ultimate causes of sufferings. First one is greed and desire. Second, ignorance or delusion. Third, hatred and destructive urges. The origin of life's evil is explained by Buddha in the lights of his special conception of natural causation known as Pratitya Samutpad. According to it, nothing is unconditional. The existence of everything depends on some conditions. Now, the third noble truth. The Buddha taught that the way to extinguish desire, which causes suffering, is to liberate oneself from attachment. This is the third noble truth, the possibility of liberation. Nirvana means extinction. Attaining nirvana and reaching enlightenment means extinguishing the three fires of greed, delusion, and hatred. Someone who reaches nirvana does not immediately disappear to a heavenly realm. Nirvana is better understood as a state of mind that humans can reach. It is a state of profound spiritual joy without negative emotions and fears. Someone who has attained enlightenment is filled with compassion for all living things. After death, an enlightened person is liberated from the cycle of rebirth, but Buddhism gives no definite answers as to what happens next. Now, the fourth noble truth. The final noble truth is the Buddha's prescription for the end of suffering. This is a set of principles called the Eightfold Path. This path is also called the Middle Way. The Eightfold Path consists of 8 practices, that is, right view. Right view teaches that by one restraining oneself, cultivating discipline, and practicing mindfulness and meditation, house livers, monk and nuns attains nirvana and stop their craving, clinging, and karmic accumulations, thereby ending their rebirth and suffering. The Eightfold Path is often represented by means of the Dharma wheel, in which its 8 spokes represent the 8 elements of the path. So first one is right view. The first organ of the Eightfold Path is Samyak Drishti. According to Buddha, ignorance is the root cause of bondage. It is due to ignorance that we accept unreal as real, not self as self, transitory as permanent, and develop attachment for them. This is the wrong view about them, and this wrong view can be removed by right view alone, and therefore Samyak Drishti forms an essential organ of the Eightfold Path. Second one is right resolve. The second is Samyak Sankalp. It means longing for renunciation, the hope to live in love with all, the aspiration of true humanity. The aspirant has to give up the idea of separateness and has to work for the whole. He must resolve to bear the burden of all creatures. Thus, aspirant's resolution to work for the welfare of all is the meaning of Samyak Sankalp. Now the third one is right speech. Right resolution finds its expression in right speech. An aspirant for release must speak what is true. Unnecessary talk has to be avoided. He must also avoid harsh and unpleasant language. In fact, abstention from falsehood, harsh language, and idle gossip is called right speech. Now, the fourth one is right action. The fourth is right action, which means performing only unselfish and good actions. Our motive must be pure. We must observe the rules of non-violence, non-stealing, self-control, etc. in our life. We must live for the good and benefit of all beings. We must give up all evil deeds. Next one is right livelihood. The fifth is right livelihood, which means an aspirant must adopt right means of livelihood. In fact, right action leads to right living, free from lying, fraud, etc. Next, right effort. The sixth is the right effort, which means practicing control of passions so that the rise of bad qualities in the mind is prevented. An aspirant has to practice constantly to keep his mind away from bad qualities and to fill up his mind with good qualities. Next one is right thinking. The seventh is right thinking, which means steadiness of the mind. To avoid mental unsteadiness, the mind has to be controlled. The mind becomes pure with pure mental thought. An aspirant can obtain nirvana with pure mind alone, because on the pure mind depends dharma, and on the practice of dharma depends enlightenment. Last one is right concentration. The eighth and the last is right concentration, in which all passions, bad dispositions of the aspirant become extinct and he attains the ultimate goal, nirvana. There are 4 stages of samadhi. The first is that of reasoning and argumentation, in which the aspirant experiences the joy of pure thinking. In the second stage, all doubts are removed and the aspirant develops the attitude of respect for 4 noble truths. It is a stage of peace. In the third stage, the aspirant develops the sense of detachment for peace and tranquility. In it, he experiences perfect equanimity and bodily ease. In the final stage, there is no consciousness of ease and equanimity. The aspirant enters into deep concentration, remaining indifferent to pleasure and pain. It is a state of complete cessation of sorrows and sufferings. It is the state of nirvana, obtaining which the aspirant becomes arhat or Buddha, the enlightened. Now, sects of Buddhism. 2 main sects can be distinguished within Buddhism: Heenyan and Mahayana. Yan means vehicle, and so Heenyan means small carrier, while Mahayana means the great carrier. The Mahayanists began to call themselves so because they claimed that their faith was the great vehicle which could help all mankind to attain salvation. Heenyan sects of Buddhism has remained more loyal to the original teachings of Lord Buddha. It has remained atheistic to a great extent and has taken the eightfold path of attaining nirvana as taught by Lord Buddha to be only effective and a religious practice. The Heenyanists regard Buddha as an ideal and a great personality whose imitation they preach and practice, and also to some extent they adore and worship him, but nevertheless they never take him identical with the theistic God. On the other hand, the Mahayana sect, although not forsaking the essential of Lord Buddha's original teachings, has lapsed into a kind of theism, even a kind of polytheism, giving place to elaborate rites and rituals. Now, to sum up the entire discussion, it can be said that Buddha, in his third noble truth, talks about the state in which there is complete cessation of all sufferings. This state is known as nirvana, which can be attained in the lifetime and also after death. The liberated soul performs activities for the welfare of the humanity as a whole. In the fourth noble truth, Buddha talks about the path which leads one to nirvana. As the path consists of 8 organs, It is known as Astang Marg, which can be adopted by anyone without distinction. Adopting this path, an aspirant can be assured of obtaining nirvana, the ultimate goal of his life.